session, Circular Economy, a Means to Responsible Consumption and Production in Cities by Mr. HUSSEIN Orekoya. Mr. HUSSEIN is a climate-smart civil engineer and co-founder CEO of My Environment is Mine initiative, a UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network youth member organization and official supporting partner of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, working for the future of cities in Africa through advocacy and social development projects. Mr. HUSSEIN is a recipient of the Youth Climate Fund by the Urban Movement Innovation Fund, and he aspires to become an international development consultant with a mission to multiply his organization's impact across Africa. Thank you for joining us today, Mr. HUSSEIN. Over to you for your session, Circular Economy, a Means to Responsible Consumption and Production in Cities. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. I'm HUSSEIN Orekoya, and I'm speaking from Nigeria, West Africa, rather. So my presentation today is talking about circular economy as a means to responsible consumption and production in cities. Thankfully for the SDG goal focus, that's SDG12, which talks about sustainable consumption and production patterns in the world. So more reason why I prefer this topic is because of the advent of circular economy as a means to reduce waste production and consumption pattern. And why do we need to care about our consumption rate and production pattern is that the end goal of what we are producing is really causing a damage into our society. And I will permit me to actually I can't share my screen now, but I would have loved to do that. There is a need for, let me just quickly do the brief definition of circular economy itself. It's a model of consumption and production which involves sharing, leasing, reusing, repairing, and refurbishing of existing materials and products as long as possible. So meaning that the excess of we going into circular economy is to reduce the waste. And why is it important in cities? That city is fast growing. According to the UN Habitat, it is estimated that in the year 2050, more than 60% of the whole population will be resident in cities, which shows that there will be a burden in cities in advent of consumption of raw materials and even finished products, and also demand for social infrastructure like healthcare, education facilities, and also transportation. So all these means of consuming either materials or devices or services rather, it really goes down to the beginning of manufacturing of all these products itself. And I do cite an example that why I do cite an example of how our consumption rates can even impact the climate itself, in the sense that we are a social being, in the sense that we tend to buy new things periodically. And the more we buy, looking into the production of at least maybe a shirt, for example, now, the shirt started from the agricultural sector in terms of planting the cotton. From the planting of the cotton, it goes on into the factory itself, whereby it's being separated. Actually, I'm not so familiar with the textile industry, but I know that the cotton or the shirt we're putting on today comes from the tree. So from the planting of the tree to the manufacturing process, whereby it's been processed, turned into fabric, it goes into a lot of consumption of materials like water and even energy in terms of the energy that we use in producing or empowering our factories. And looking at the energy we make use of empowering our facilities, we make use of the fossil fuels. And the fossil fuels are referred to as dirty energy, in the sense that it produces or it emits CO2. So emitting CO2 adds to the ozone depletion by meeting up with the global greenhouse gas emission itself. So using that, looking at that kind of clothes that we're producing, quantifying the number of energy that's been consumed before it gets to the market that's been sold in the boutique, for example. Now, the boutique store will also be powered with electricity, will be stocked, and every everything that makes it to the final consumer of that shirt, for example. Now, so looking at all those resources that have been uh, that are needed to produce at least just one shirt to now be multiplied into multiples for the urban growth in cities, and also our insatiable demand for finished products. If you can example, if I imagine, most people do buy shirts for as much as they want without constraining of even recycling the shirts by maybe giving it out to some people that might need it before going to get another ones like that. So looking at how the number of resources that are being put together to produce this shirt, and the finite resources that we have at our disposal in terms of natural resources. So these are what brings about circular economy. That how can we utilize the material that we've already generated to reuse that material instead of turning into waste and becoming a nuisance in society. And going into all the sector, because most of the sectors generally have a role to play in circular economy. It's not only fixed to a particular industry. We have countless of up to like 6 industries, which I will list them out now. So one of it is the textile industry, where I've cited an example, and the next one is the construction industry too. Construction industry have been known, according to the UN Habitat also, there's a report on that more than 40% of the global emission are being contributed by the construction industry. And how is it? Looking at the materials that are being used for construction, how can we make sure that we utilize the circular economy model to reduce the waste that are being generated from the construction industry? In the sense of the the cement are being produced by the calcium carbon trioxide, that's CaCO3. So actually, I'm speaking the chemical formula. So it's all about reducing the carbon content in cement, and how can we even repurpose the use of other materials in place of cement and other granite and sand in building some facilities that are not strength required, like facilities in maybe agricultural farm like that, using maybe plastic bricks to build houses in farm yard instead of relying on concrete again. How can we utilize all those kind of models to reduce the consumption of cement in the industry? And the next industry is the automotive industry. And the automotive industry also consumes lots of energy-based resources, like the oil and gas that we make use of in the automobile industry, and also in terms of transportation too. Transport industry are also contributing towards the greenhouse gas emission, looking at the fuel that's fueling the vehicles that we have. So, and currently the world is moving in towards electric vehicles, which I give a kudos to the innovation, because looking at the numbers of cars that are on the streets, it's really increasing as the city is growing. So as the city is expanding, there's a huge number of cars in the city, and there's some models that have been brought out. And circular economy does not only means that we have to recycle or to reuse the end product. It also means that what retwerking the models that we have, instead of a linear model, to a circular model that allows a reuse, or perhaps still a reshuffle in the use of our resources. And that points to the transport industry. Like, instead of individual cars to be on the streets, why can't we encourage buses that will take or that will accommodate more people per time? Looking at that, it will reduce the number of cars, individual cars that will be on the streets. Though there are a lot of arguments about that because of the lifestyle that people live in cities. And the lifestyle as our lifestyle of individuals are what is really contributing towards the high rate of consumption and production that we find in the world today. Because most some of the things that we purchase, we don't even need them in the first place. But because of the social norms and peer pressure, because when you find out that your friend is using a car, you will be tempted to save money to go and buy a car. But have you ever asked yourself, what's the implication of buying a car towards what the environment and towards what the sustainability of the world generally, and in using what, I mean, proud in using a common general transportation model that have been provided by the government. And the next industry I will mention is the logistics industry. The logistics industry is also focused on or are contributing towards the circular economy, or can be remodeled using the circular economy because of the high rate of consumption of packaged product rather in cities. Comparing the consumption of packaged products in cities to that of the rural communities is very high, because in cities there are a lot of logistics industry, and even now they're even getting more because of the COVID-19. They get to be utilized more than before, because we just dial from your phone, you can order for any product that you need. So how can circular economy be used in this? Is such in such a way that the packaged material, because there's a startup company in Singapore that is working on reusing reused plastics for food industry. The food industry that delivers food to their clients, instead of making use of single-use plastics, they incorporated what, a a reusable plastic for their delivery, whereby when they get to the delivery, the customer rather, they tend to give out the food and have a way of getting back the plastic, in a way of giving them a token back. So such kind of model is what can be adopted in many cities across the world to encourage circular economy. And the next industry is the agricultural industry, and I think this can be synonymous to food industry. In the food industry, it shouldn't be left out in terms of circular economy. But you might be wondering how a circular economy model will be incorporated in food industry or agriculture industry. It's very much applicable, because there are certain models or certain products that can be recycled to give a fresh product. And I will cite an example, because we tend to eat more food. And there's this question that has been asked in my previous what's it called it presentation, like, how do we feed ourselves in our growing city? So with the advent of the circular economy, we can what tend to feed ourselves sustainably. And I will cite an example of a company in Netherlands that is working on bread reuse, like bread food waste, like rather, in such a way that when there is a stock of bread in maybe in a factory, or probably the bakery itself, the ones that have gotten spoiled or that have met the shelf life, well, we will be taken into a factory that will be recycled into what, a malt, because of the content that in the bread itself will be recycled into a malt that will be canned and probably produce like a malt to be drink. And there's some residue in the from the malt that have been generated itself that will make, actually I would have loved to share the video with you. Actually, I can't do that now. So like the residue from the recycled bread that has been turned to malt will now be reused again as feed for agricultural livestock. And some of it can also be used in planting of trees in the farm. So in such a way, that kind of model has really helped in what in circularizing the bread production, which I believe is a very good model that can be adopted all over the world. And going back to the next style is the advent of the manure from agriculture. We found out that the excrete from livestock contains lots of methane, and methane we know is a lot of is part of the greenhouse gases that depletes the ozone layer. So the methane from the livestock excrete can be reused in form of compost. So as a compost, it will be reused in producing manure for agricultural produce. So in such a way, there's a model that assists in reducing a linear production in the agricultural sector. And next is the furniture sector and also the oil and gas sector. which I believe with these two explanations will cap it all for my presentation today. So for the furniture industry, we know that a lot of falling of trees in the forest that have been turned into furniture for use at homes and in offices really brings about how can we reuse uh, furniture, maybe probably like a wood residue like sawdust and most unused plants like that. So there are a lot of idea in that. And the next one is the oil and gas industry. The oil and gas industry also contribute, can adopt the circular economy to improve the consumption pattern of in the cities by 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 making sure that there's a mix in the use of oil and gas in all their production. So I believe this cut across all the areas that I know that is focusing on consumption in cities. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hussein, for that very informative session, and thank you for joining us today. We wish we could